What up, what up, what up? It's your boy Dave B watching Beyond Astrology right here. We're gonna break down we're gonna talk about Venus being in Aries, but I'm also gonna talk about some of the other energy that's playing out. Overall, the energy that we are experiencing at the moment, it might not feel like it yet, but trust and believe that the spark is back. You know what I'm saying? With Aries energy, Aries is that cardinal fire, so you already know it's about kind of like reigniting that passion within you. I kind of mentioned this in the last video I was talking about. I don't know if that was just about the retrograde. Well, yeah, it was about the eclipse and the retrograde. The thing about it is, being that we're still experiencing that retrograde, Mercury and Pisces, it really just feels like, okay, we can feel a sense of needing to start something new. We can kind of maybe some of us might feel some of the warmth of that spark, like when a lighter, you flicking a lighter and it didn't quite catch yet, but you feel it kind of like starting to warm up and stuff like that. Also, even through the weather, we can start to feel the weather in certain areas, right? Feel the weather starting to shift and change into a little bit of a warmer, milder climate and stuff like that. So all of these things are giving you signals, as without, as within, or reverse, I like to as within, as without first, you know what I'm saying? So we're feeling like the hint of like, okay, there is something revealing, being revealed to us. And that something has a lot to do with Venus now in Aries. And I'm gonna pull up the chart in a little bit, but we got Venus in Aries that's pretty much going right into a conjunction with both Saturn and Neptune, right? So both Saturn and Neptune in Aries, this is kind of like the energetic tone for this whole year in a sense, at least the first half, right? Where we have this, it's a kind of a complicated energy because what we have here is, it's almost like it reminds me of energy of like kind of how 2020 was, right? In the sense of there's new things being started, but there's all of these old things that we've kind of invested, or you might feel like you've invested so much time and energy into these old things, and then you're kind of being called to initiate something new. So a lot of people are kind of caught in between, which way do I go? And again, that Mercury retrograde is creating kind of like a foggy energy our around the flame and the spark that we're trying to ignite, that's really trying to lead us to something new. So again, it's very confusing, but the main thing, I guess the first message I want to get across is like, don't stress too much about not knowing what to do or having the full clarity, because we don't have the full picture yet. We have hints, and you might have your intuition calling you to do one thing, but this is again, we still in Pisces season. So with Pisces season in it being a retrograde in Pisces, Mercury dealing with that, the way we're thinking, our thoughts are too consumed in what we feel. And whenever you're too, and you have to understand, like, so these planets like Mercury, as well as Venus and Saturn, and I want to say Uranus, even to a degree, are debilitated, which really just means like when a planet is debilitated or in a space that it's not comfortable with. It's like when you go over to your friend's house, you know what I'm saying? And so, or you go over, let's say it's a group of three of y'all, right? You friends with somebody, but they brought you to somebody else's house that you just met. So the energy of being in someone's house that you're not familiar with, you kind of like, you might feel like you have to people please. You might feel like you have to, you don't know really what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing to do. So you're highly uncomfortable. So think of that in the context of how Mercury is dealing with energy in Pisces. Now, like I was saying, when it's in retrograde, I actually like it in, with Mercury is retrograde in a sign like Pisces or in a sign like Sagittarius, because what a retrograde does when it's in a debilitation is it slows it down enough for you to kind of like collect yourself and make, it's not a guarantee, but it gives you the opportunity to slow things down. Whereas in the regular energy, right, if it was direct, you could kind of like, make I guess, for lack of better phrase, like lack of better words, like you could be impulsive, or you could make decisions that you did it, and then you got to think back and be like, oh damn, actually I shouldn't have did that. the retrograde slows things down enough for you to kind of assess things before you participate. But not just because that's a possibility doesn't mean everybody is going to take that choice. That has a lot to do with your own self-awareness and your own understanding of what's going on in your subconscious. And please understand, like when we talk about the subconscious and why it's important, the subconscious is what's motivating all of your conscious actions. A lot of times what you'll experience is the people who lack again, you can have all the self-awareness in the world but still lack subconscious awareness. Like you can be aware, like you come across people all the time who are very aware of what they do, and they'll even like find all the ways to justify what they do, right? But they're not aware of the motivations behind these things, and that's where a lot of lines get crossed, or where intentions are misinterpreted, and things could get kind of messy when you're trying to engage with different individuals, even like especially yourself being the person who is maybe self-aware but not aware of what's going on subconsciously. So the motivations or the real purpose behind your actions get caught up in, you end up doing things that you end up regretting or feel like you got to take back, right? Or feel shamed for, and it's not always the reason for shame. Sometimes shame comes from other things, but a lot of times but a lot of this has to do because when you start to understand your subconscious more, and then you get closer to the root of why you do what you do, it's a lot easier to come to make peace with who you are, to understand who you are, and then also that gives you a kind of like an extra layer of emotional intelligence and things like that. Which this current transit that we're going through, the moon just got into Scorpio, so we have this grand water trine between the sun in Pisces, the moon in Scorpio, and then the Jupiter in Cancer as well. Sun, Mercury in really, we have matter of fact, let me go ahead and pull up what I'm looking at so y'all can see it and we can go through it. Boom, boom. Hold on real quick. Boom. All right, cool. Boom. Share this. Come on now. All right, cool. So we got, as you can see here, we got so yeah, Jupiter's still retrograde, right? And we're gonna get it, we're gonna touch back on Jupiter, but we also got so we got Mercury in Pisces, we got Sun in Pisces, and then we got the North Node, and then we got Mars kind of lagging behind, right? So Mars was leading the way back in Aquarius season, but now Mars is behind us and it's in Pisces. And we really have to talk about this as well, but we also got the moon right now. We got the moon in Scorpio. So let's attack this. Let's dive in, because what's happening right now, like I said before, like even Mars and Pisces is a representation of like you knowing, you having a sense of what you want to do but not quite knowing, you don't have enough clarity about how you want to approach it. Mars, a lot of times, like Mars is that is the Aries type energy, which is that cardinal aspect and also the fixed aspect. So if you think of, and what I mean by that is like Aries and Scorpio. So this is the energy that Mars is, related to or birthed out of, right? Or however you want to look at it, that's where Mars, that's the two sides of Mars. It's a cardinal nature, a cardinal fire nature, and a fixed water nature. So Mars understanding like, okay, if we're looking at a transit and we see that Mars is going through Pisces, okay, this is a initiating fire in a fixed water in a mutable water sign. So just by understanding those dynamics, we can see, oh, okay, our passion, our accessibility to the aspect of ourselves that is our passion and our motivation and our ability to start something, and our ability to kind of not only start but endure. When you go to war with something, when there's like to understand the nature of Mars, like when something frustrates you, right, it jolts energy in you, right, to make you want to be confrontational, right? So like a strong Mars knows how to stand up for themselves, but they also are strong. So this kind of also helps understand that whole thing I was saying with debilitations, where a person with a weak Mars, like a Mars in Cancer, they feel like they have to overcompensate because they're not quite comfortable with that energy. They're not familiar with it. They're a stranger in somebody else. They're in a stranger's home at the moment. So they don't really know when the right time to fight is. But someone with a strong Mars knows how to conduct themselves even if they are frustrated. So they can take that anger and they know how to place it in the right places to where, you know, and again, I'm making generalizations because a person's individual experience and what they know and all of that plays into things. But a lot of times people with strong Mars, when they do act on Mars energy, is usually received well, even if the situation is it gets, intense, even if negative things happen, it's still good for the person with the Mars in that space because they learn something. They learn better ways to use it. They get, they might even get respect in some kind of ways from the outside world. But try not to complicate things too much, but understanding Mars being in Pisces, again, our ability to access that fight in us, or that ability to endure and go to war with something and like withstand difficult situations to persevere and push through, is in Pisces, which is kind of like, again, wishy-washy. So our motivations might not feel like, we might not feel like if you were like imagine you was trying to run but your shoes ain't got no grip on them. So it feels like you kind of slipping. So every time you feel the motivation to get up and do something, it's like, damn, you can't quite get a grip to stand firm, you know what I'm saying, and actually get to where you want to go. So, but the thing about it is sometimes we get in the way of the natural flow of energy, right? Again, like that's like going against the grain or going against the current, the wave, the current thing going on right now. The energy right now is not asking you to go out and try to fight every battle, or going out and trying to assert yourself in certain ways. And when it comes to Mars, right, the assertion is going to come from what we got in Aries, right? And we'll touch on that, right? But first, I want to kind of talk about this other energy. So, Mars, right, in Pisces, then we got Mercury. We talked about Mercury kind of having that fog around making sense out of things, right? And we kind of feel like we have to overcompensate with Mercury because it's debilitated in Pisces. So we might feel like we have to overthink about our feelings because it's in Pisces. So right now, one of the worst mistakes you can make is overthinking about your feelings to the point that you exhaust yourself mentally in an emotional and dealing with an emotional problem, right? The problem with understanding debilitations, I can give you a good example through this. This is like you're trying to solve an emotional problem with logic, and that can't really always, again, that's not going to work. You're trying to solve your feelings by making logical sense. Now, the thing about it is, like I said before about understanding the current, when you look at an energy like this, it's not about trying to go against it, but it's understanding what's happening. So there does need to be a level of thought or some type of participate, like mental participation, going like kind of trying to do a little bit of logic applied to how we feel, but the trick is to not overcompensate with it, or not to overdo it. Is to understand it through, there's like, because you got to understand like with placements and stuff like that. A lot of astrologers will kind of bring it down and be like, oh, that's right or that's wrong. Do this or do that. But the thing about it is it's a lot more nuance. So it's like the nuance is we still have Mercury in Pisces and it's retrograde. So we still need to be thinking and considering and analyzing the root of why we feel what we feel. But the thing is just not to overthink it or think that you can solve an emotional problem by logic or intellectualizing it, right? Or even over communicating it. Because right now, and see, we even have this energy with the North Node conjunct uh Mars. Uh this is like again, reaction, like a very reactive energy where everything we feel, now we feel like we might have to Mars assert it, and that might not actually be the answer, when you might need to sit down and reflect and redirect that Martian energy into a better space. Because Mars, Mars and Pisces, this is the thing. Like it's not even, again, it's like you don't know what to fight for, or you're fighting for a feeling, when sometimes a feeling can get you in trouble because it's not quite just because you feel some kind of way. See the difference between, it's like, think about it like this, right? Emotions, and feelings are different. Emotions is things that we sit in and we start to ruminate over, and we start to, you know, again, it starts to become, it shows information, it reveals information, but we are not our emotions. And then our feelings are something that we kind of like, you brush up against things that kind of come into our, kind of push us and lead us to dive deeper. And once we dive deeper, it becomes an emotion, right? But feelings, a lot of times, it's not meant to be, uh, it's hard to explain, but it's like, if you are with Mars and Pisces, being that it's emotional, if you're lost into an emotion or too invested into an emotion or how you feel, it can distort what you think is worth fighting for. It can distort what you think you're motivated by, right? Even Pisces being rooted in meanings and reasonings, you can start to construct a meaning behind why you think it's right to fight for something when you just don't have clarity over it. It's too bogged down by emotion. It's too, and then again, like the emotion is constantly shifting. So you don't, it's like not having a clear target. So this looks like on the external world, this looks like you, again, like moody energy. This is you kind of trying to, um, kind of somewhat impulsive, somewhat, you're shifting energy in a way that might not actually serve you how you would like it. Because when it's all said and done, and then that clarity comes back, you start to realize, damn, I spend a lot of energy aiming this anger or this frustration in areas that I didn't need to aim it in. And that could make you feel, again, even more embarrassed or more shamed. And then now, when we're in Aries season where everybody needs to be kind of moving in confidence, you are having a kind of like a micro retrograde where now you have to clean up the mess from a previous energy that you wasn't quite clear on. And you kind of, again, you have to also move. It's like time waits for no man, in the sense of like, now all the energy is in a new space, and because you did the previous energy poorly, you not only playing cleanup, but you have to kind of reconcile and make peace with what you made as a mistake. And this is how now you're going into Aries season with lacking confidence or feeling shame, or like you misspoke or did the wrong thing and kind of created a rupture in a connection that you might want to continue with. Like it's all kinds of things that can happen from that, and that's just misuse of energy. But it's, again, if you find yourself making a mistake, don't take it too heavily to the point where you can't bounce back. There's always going to be space to bounce back. You just have to have, but that's when the ego has to dissolve, and you have to be willing to birth yourself again. And that's a good point too. Like right now with this energy, before we actually hit the Aries energy, before we actually enter the true new year, a lot of people don't know how to deal with the dissolving of what we once thought we were. And that, I think, is a lot of the pain that a lot of us might be feeling right now. Because there's a lot of pain in coming to terms with what we once identified with no longer suits the path that we're on. And that's like one of the hardest things. That's why Pisces can be such a somber energy, a somber time period for some people, because it's the, especially if you did like, something, again, like, there's nothing wrong with ego, but ego has an expiration date. Ego is tied to the human aspect of ourselves, but we are still, at the end of the day, spirits having that human experience. You know what I'm saying? We're still spirits at the end of the day. So sometimes you have to lean into the spirit to understand how to proceed. And it's like you got to always trust. And this is what faith really is, and why faith is associated with Pisces. It's like you have to have faith that through the dissolving of your ego, which you thought you were, which is like the death of your old previous mind state, what you've created identity around, the transition of that, what carries you into the next energy is the faith. You know what I'm saying? And again, having faith, it's not about having faith in something. I mean, if anything, having faith in yourself. This is what people cling to religion for. This is what people dive into spirituality for. This is what people, even people who are lost into the material world, and they created a god out of money or something like that, or a god out of something else that's an earthly thing. This is where that's essentially what they're trying to do. Like a lot of people who get addicted to things, who create a god out of what they want to, anything that gives them the relief of, you know, it's like something to believe in, or something to give them the relief of the expiration. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, it gets deep. But at the end of the day, when you do this properly, it creates a kind of a knowing or a trusting. And again, not to say you're not going to have feelings that come in, and emotions that uh try to distract you into reacting in a panic or a desperation to cling on to something for dear life. But this is what we have to learn right now, is how to kind of like let go of that, how to relinquish that need for control, to steer the ship into something, because your brain is always going to want to steer the ship back into something that's familiar. And what's familiar is not always good for the spirit, not always good for the soul. Usually it's not, because the soul and the spirit knows when it's time to go, but that's the faith of it. You know what I'm saying? That's the faith. Or there's an intuitive knowing of something that is not quite right. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not quite right for me. That's not quite aligned. Um, and so, we have the sun, how we see ourselves dissolving in real time. The Mercury kind of in a fog, a daze, trying to make sense out of things that are not sensible. Your feelings not always going to make sense. Why you feel this way, why you think you care about a certain thing doesn't always make sense, or why you just can't seem to care about another thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like a lot of that might not make such direct sense, but here you are still having to kind of still having to navigate through that, right? Now, when we look at another energy, no, okay, so we got these energies, right? The sun, Mercury, Mars trining Jupiter, right? Jupiter in Cancer. Now, this is a interesting thing too. So on the 11th, we have Jupiter going direct. So that's going to contribute to clarity being uh kind of brought into our awareness. Like, that's considered a positive energy, right? Jupiter is exalted in Cancer as well. So it'll all make sense at some point. You know what I'm saying? I know that sounds crazy, because like it's like one of those things, like it'll all make sense one day, but it will. You know what I'm saying? Things will start slowly but surely reveal themselves, and you'll have that clarity. The 11th is when we get Jupiter activated, and so that can widen or broaden our capacity for uh just compassion. So, I like to look at it as something to use for ourselves first. So that compassion for you to kind of like, I guess, further your healing process, to continue your healing process through acceptance, understanding that your emotional experience is yours to, it's yours. So there's comfort in that. Some people could be afraid of that, but it's kind of like a opportunity window for you to just make peace, reconcile with the truth of how you feel. And that's the thing right now. I think it's going to be hardest for people who just cannot deal with the truth of what they feel. And so they overcompensate by trying to come up with all these logical things, or external things, to give them a reason to cling on, when the only real reason why they're clinging on is because they're afraid, or they don't really trust whatever that next phase is. They're not ready yet. And if you find yourself to not be ready, um, shoot, I can't sugarcoat it for you. Life is going to push you anyway. So, you know, life is going to push you anyway. You can't lie to yourself. Like that's the thing, the irony, right? Because everybody lies to themselves, but the lie is always going to expire. You know what I'm saying? So it's coming, and that's the anxiety a lot of people create for themselves, is that they know they're lying whenever they have a feeling, the intuition is telling them something, or they're in a certain space that they know they don't belong, when they're participating in things that they're not aligned with. I like to think that the reason a lot of the world is dealing with all of these things like anxiety and even down to depression and these kind of like mental viruses, right? You know what I'm saying? Different mental, not talking about um, but like these are like mental illnesses that come that are curable. I'm talking about the curable ones. Like these are mental illnesses that infiltrate a person's ability to be present, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of that comes from just the way society is structured. A lot of us are working jobs that have nothing to do with what we're supposed to be doing, and we have to find ways to justify it all. And some people can justify it in a way that allows them to do what they need to do and they can create balance. But some people struggle with that. And sometimes the more the harder it is to create that balance, right? The more you are in tune with who you really are, the harder it is to kind of find that balance. And a lot of that, is the reason why y'all probably found this channel is because it's like, how do I even, I know why I got into astrology. Like I got deep into astrology because I'm trying to figure out why the fuck I feel like this and how do I use my energy to kind of get some kind of balance and understanding so I could just live and be happy and da 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 da. You know what I'm saying? Not to say you need again, astrology is merely a tool, you know and this is like lessons in spirituality about creating happiness and creating these energies that you want to feel, but understanding the energy help you kind of just put things in perspective and develop intention or have sharper intention on what you're trying to do at a certain period of time, right? Um but for the most part, last thing I'll say about this grand water trine, like the moon being in Scorpio, it has the opportunity to help you dive deeper into understanding what's going on an emotional level. So that's the positive about this weekend. This weekend we can have a little bit of reprieve, or at least the moon and see again, the moon is debilitated as well. The moon in Scorpio does not like to be there. I might be using debilitated. I just know it don't like to be there, right? Or falls. I don't think. I sometimes I get confused about debilitated versus fall and all the terms, but for the most part, the moon is opposite to it's fallen. I think because it's exalted here. So whether it's fall or it's debilitated, whatever, the moon does not necessarily like to be in Scorpio. So it can start to, it kind of doesn't quite know what to do with itself. But the best thing you could do with the moon in Scorpio is to, allow yourself some quiet time. Right now is great for quiet time, getting away from the distractions. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that might be trying to pull you outside, pull you to talk to this person, associate with that thing. But this energy is great for if you can carve out some time to just sit. And when I say sit in silence, I don't mean how you meditate is how you meditate, but there's like in today's time, there's just such a bombarding of like information, even through music and things like that, even through like the passive things. Like sometimes people like to passively meditate. So they like to do something while they're kind of allowing themselves to, drift off mentally. But, do what you do, but I will also recommend just trying to just completely unplug for a second, not going to sleep, but turning off everything and allowing your mind or your feelings to just sit. You know what I'm saying? Just sit and really because the messages that might or the information that will flow in and out might be something that you can utilize to have just again get closer to that clarity, because the clarity is coming, but there's things that you can of course do now to keep you from, I guess, drifting too far away from uh drifting too far away from I guess the truth. Because sometimes like if you get too involved, like when you're trying to search for truth, a lot of times it becomes elusive. When you're trying to, sometimes, and this is the type of energy, again, back to that anxiety thing, because we don't really know what's going on. You might just be, this is a time where people could be hyper invested in trying to scroll and find something, or just something to distract your mind from thinking about your feelings, or distract your feelings from trying to come up with a theory in your mind. So, just something that can help with that process is, you know, give yourself permission to unplug and do nothing, because again, all of that energy is just kind of it might be dragging you this way, dragging you that way, and it's not gonna, yeah, it might be, it's all kinds of energy that might just be taking you for a ride, and there's nothing actually that you need to do, because again, like I said before, this is the time before the new year. So there's nothing that we actually need to do. Now in your personal life, you might have things that need attention and responsibilities and all that stuff. But strictly for your on a spiritual level, it's like you need to clear out space so that you can move with better discernment, so you can have better, use your energy responsibly and intentionally without getting too caught up in all over, being all over the place, because that's the kind of my point, is like that Pisces energy can just be messy and you can start to just be doing things impulsively, right? So now let's get into the actual, what I said the point of the video is going to be. So we're going to be talking about Venus and Aries. Let's talk about having your spark back. So this is the thing with Venus and Aries overall. Venus is that planet of love, appreciation, right? Value. Now, in Aries, it is debilitated, or has to do things like that are not necessarily its wheelhouse, because Venus loves to compromise and be in harmony. But it's difficult to harmonize or to compromise when you put the planet of harmony in you put that planet, you put Venus in Aries, which is about the self. And sometimes speaking up for yourself disrupts the harmony. Sometimes speaking up and being um authentic disrupts the balance. And this is kind of like a natural order and chaos situation, where sometimes, when you spark something new or you introduce something new, the scale's gonna tip before it recalibrates. You know what I'm saying? So, how do we kind of deal with that energy, right? Venus and Aries, I took some notes, right? So initiating this could look like for you, right? And this is just we're gonna start broad but go deeper. So this could look like for you initiating a new love life, or a newfound passion or appreciation for a new desire. Or uh yeah, newfound passion or appreciation, or a new desire that's developed, right? Now, again, a new desire developing. So this could look like a person externally looking at a bunch of other things. Like you was in a relationship, now you got new eyes for something else, right? Or you are you were doing something, but now you're kind of being like called to do another creative project. Or you were just new eyes for things, new attraction, right? A new desire, a new want. Um Now, I would suggest to direct this towards yourself and what feels aligned, because while some individuals might get caught up in looking outside of themselves, sometimes I just caution against that sometimes, because like again, I always suggest to go within first, because you might think you want something new. Like for instance, like, for example, you might be in a relationship, but then Venus done hit Aries, and now you might feel like, man, wandering eyes, or you might start getting excited, or things might even start coming your way in a way where you start looking and you like, you know what? I think I actually want a new desire. I want something new, but you're not realizing that if you were to take a minute and direct that energy internally first, you would realize that that external desire is actually might be a false signal that's distracting you from you looking within yourself to understand something deep emotionally that you want. And the real path might be something where you need to express or start to get familiar with this new internal desire, and whether that's in whatever comes from that, whether that's communicating it to your partner, whether that's you taking the initiative to change a perspective about maybe the life that you built for yourself, or going down a new path, or switching something up that comes from you looking within yourself. Like I like to look, I like to suggest to look within first, instead of just getting excited by the external shit, because the external shit gonna tell you, yeah, you want somebody new, but the real internal shit might be, no, you trying to change something within yourself, or you trying to look for something. There's something within you that you actually trying to address. But it's just, I do that because sometimes a person can kind of I feel like everything is like kind of divinely, but a person can get themselves in trouble chasing something on the external when the answer was really internal. So you think you want someone new, but it's really you just having a change of heart and as far as the desire that you might have and the culminate like where you at in the relationship. It just sometimes it's the course of the relationship just led you to a space where it's hard to communicate that what but that is the challenge of the season for you, if you get what I'm saying. Like this just prevents you from kind of throwing away something that you actually wanted. Because that's the thing too with this energy, that retrograde could be mixing in with certain things. Again, we don't have the full picture. So a lot of the negatives that's going to come from this Venus and Aries energy is going to come from impulse and you having eyes that are bigger than your stomach. You having a desire for something that is really a distraction from a deep internal thing that you're trying to sort out. So these are just things to be aware of, right? But directing that energy towards yourself and what feels aligned. Now, if you did the work and you're what is aligned for you is to leave that situation or to jump into something new or pursue something externally, then that's your answer. But always kind of check in with yourself first to get truth. That's what I mean by like even that subconscious awareness, because that's how you get kind of caught up in something, right? Now, like I was saying in the beginning of the video, that Venus is going to conjunct with Neptune and Saturn, right? So dreams are exciting, but the work is real. However, there can be an inclination towards optimism, right? So that's a positive. We can see the light over the horizon because we got a new desire or a new want that we're inspired by. Now, Venus and Neptune's gonna blow Venus up and make it all dreamy and again activate that imagination where a lot of beautiful creativity could be cultivated. However, Saturn being in the mix could be I think it's kind of positive because it kind of softens Saturn. However, the reality is still there. Now, Saturn is also debilitated. So it's going to kind of give you this energy again, Saturn and Aries energy, because I've been mentioning this in other videos too. That Saturn and Aries energy is like Saturn always going to remind you that there is work involved and the work is real. And you really got to put in the time. You really got to put in the effort. You really got to kind of you know, I don't want to use the word discipline, but it's more like there's another word I want to use instead of discipline, but for lack of better words, might as well just use discipline because understanding like instead of discipline, I like the word devotion, right? Because when referring to Saturn, discipline is good too, but I feel like Saturn and Aries, it's about being devoted to something. When you're devoted to something, it's about kind of want to look up the definition, right? When you devoted to something though, I just kind of want to go off the cuff though. When you devoted to something though, it's like a deep, consistent, you know, vibration or energy or push. And Saturn and Aries is gonna bring you that like it's gonna take you through a lot of ups and downs. And it's kind of like the journey of a leader. When a person walks away from the pack to go down their own path and become, to innovate something or to become the leader, who's a person who decides to lead their life. A lot of sacrifices come with that, a lot of things that they have to start to present themselves for them to overcome. And the only thing that's going to get you through that, right? Discipline is good, discipline in the practice, but devotion is like it's already going to, like, devotion almost has discipline ingrained in it. You know what I'm saying? I just like that word a little better. Matter of fact, let me look it up because I'm using it too much to not actually have an accurate definition, right? But you know, devotion by definition, it's an act of prayer or private worship, right? No. Yeah, 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 yeah. Religion, fervor. Oh, that's synonyms. Okay. Why is it looking up synonyms? I want the definition. Yeah. Is this yeah, I think actually that might be the definition, right? That's what's coming up, right? I'm not gonna go too deep into this because I don't want to spend too much time, right? But it's the act of dedicating something to a cause, enterprise, or activity, right? The fact or state of being ardently dedicated and loyal, right? So it's like there's gonna come times where you exhausted by the journey that you set out for yourself. But the devotion is what's gonna keep you on that path, is gonna keep you actually showing up, right? And that it's like almost like consistency and even discipline to a degree are byproducts of you devoting, devoting yourself to whatever it is that to that path you want, to your purpose, to your mission, whatever you've decided for that to be. And see, that's important because see, Venus is the planet of our wants. So again, and this is the thing, throughout your life, your purpose, right, can be the same thing, or sometimes we go through different experiences that show us and reveal different things to us, and we adjust our purpose to that. And so, but the essence of it might still, it's probably going to still be the same. It's just we decide different ways to approach and attack that thing. So through the kind of energy that Saturn and Aries is going to present, right? The different ups and downs that we're going to go through where, okay, I went this way, but that's a roadblock. Okay, I got to come up with another way to go this way. All right, damn. Throughout all of those different changes of direction, when we, that like right here at the top of the energy, at the top of the year, having Venus kind of being the introduction, like Venus leading the way. Literally, Venus right here being the first one to kind of hit that threshold and start communing with the energies that are leading the year. Because I think Saturn and Neptune in Aries is really the energies that are leading this year, that are really kind of like, yeah, leading the way, carving out the way. So having Venus there, it's giving us a one-way ticket to understand, or an eye opener to understand, like, these are my new wants. These are my new desires, right? So this is that light in the fog, what I'm saying? The fog of kind of not knowing, not having all the answers, not having the whole picture, but that inner fire that becomes an inner knowing, that becomes like that sense of like, I can't prove it, but this is the way, whether you want to, whatever you want to call it, right? So the thing about it is Aries bringing that spark, or Venus and Aries bringing that spark, at the end of it, it's going to be like, it's going to have this excitement behind it. But Saturn, the benefit of having Saturn there in the mix with Venus conjuncted Neptune, the benefit of having Saturn is it's going to keep that excitement reasonable. It's going to keep it realistic. So as more information comes, and see, this will help you know what to do with this kind of energy, because that Venus is such a powerful energy in terms of, when we talk about like what's leading us, what makes us get out of, kind of like what makes us want to go harder for something, what gives us that kind of motivation, even though motivation a lot of time, motivation is coming from Mars, but what kind of sparks that interest for us to want to go deeper into understanding something also gives us the ability to kind of have that, whether you want to call it like self-esteem, or just that kind of like feeling worthy of something, that worthiness. A lot of that comes from Venus. And so, as more information comes, Venus being there, Venus next to Neptune, gonna give us that grand imagination, gonna give us that grand vision, and it's going to help us decide what we want from that vision, which is a lot of time. Like sometimes you have the vision, but you don't really know what you want. You too scattered all over the place. But Venus and Aries could give you a very clear vision of what you want, and Saturn going to bring it down to make it realistic, and it's going to give you kind of like the almost like the blueprint of knowing the process of, oh, okay, this is what's going to take to get that thing right. So moving into understanding the high octave of this energy, right? The high octave is going to be cultivating a new sense of self rooted in authenticity and confidence in the raw truth of what you want. And that's really what I'm getting at when it comes to Venus. Venus and Aries, even though it's not, people will be like, oh, it's not comfortable there. It's not comfortable there because what it does is it evokes a drive to, or it reveals an individual's raw, authentic truth through understanding what they really want. Again, all the one of the short way to kind of refer to Venus and Aries is like self-love. But what does self-love actually mean? Self-love, sometimes, words get all mixed up and people want to associate a bunch of different things to a concept, right? So self-love turned into, oh, be gentle and soft with yourself. But no, self-love is being honest with yourself, loving yourself enough to be honest and truthful, to allow yourself to get like deep and intimate with yourself. You know what I'm saying? To the point where you're not hiding anything from what you are. You're not abandoning yourself, because sometimes like that self-love gets confused with trying to soften yourself when it's actually the opposite. Sometimes it's about getting frustrated with what you know ain't right for you, to the point where you fight to get what you want because you know you deserve better. You get what I'm saying? So, cultivating a new sense of self rooted in authenticity and confidence in the raw truth of what you want. So, this is, you should be feeling lighter in weight and brightness. So, lightening your load by not attaching yourself to things that are not aligned to you, thought forms, patterns, people, things, places, concepts, all kinds of shit. Get rid of it. That is what Aries is here to do. It's light, right? Fire burns away all things that are not solid, really. Not only does it burn it away, but it also, what I'm saying, it brightens it up. So it reveals. So through the revealing of what you really want, Venus and Aries, and then also being able to connect what you want to your highest expression of that, which is Neptune, the dream of it, but then also being able to connect it to reality. And this is where people might get frustrated because their reality is showing, like, look, this is what you've built for yourself. Because Saturn, a lot of times people think of it as obstacles to come, but I like to look at Saturn also as retroactive karma of what you've already done and now are known for. And sometimes that could be the problem. Sometimes what you've built a reputation for or from can be the thing that is blocking you to move forward. So this is like a dismantling of that whole process, which is like Mars and air. I think Saturn and Aries is also like a bulldozer energy, where if you think of like what even like we're experiencing as far as society goes, where people are fed up to the point where on everybody's mind is dismantle this governmental system, dismantle this thing that does not work, burn it to the ground. That's a lot of people's sentiment. Even the people who trusted the government up until this point because they was living under a rock are still at such a deep, like, the people are fed up. And that's why they distracting you with a war going on somewhere else to put you in fear, to where you feel like, oh, well, we need to support the government. We need to be nationalists. We need to all this stupid shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? And again, still got compassion for the people who are caught up in the crossfire. And, even the people, the thing about it is like, look, if you are living in an experience where you got different people directly tied to what's going on over there, I completely understand where you coming from. But if you ain't got no ties to anything going over there, I trust, like, look, you need to redirect your focus. By now, you need to understand anything media wise is going to have your head spinning, heart sunken, wrapped up in a story. You must detach from that if you actually want to grow in your own life and do something impactful, because this is important so that you can be pretty much like vibrating and moving at a frequency that connects you to the people you need to be with, so that real building can happen in life. Because what's going to happen next is like what we need. This is important because this is like a self this unraveling of the self that we feel that we might be scared of is so necessary for us to get to a better place, like to get to a better, a clearer sense of who we are so that we can align ourselves properly as far as community goes. Without this process, you might associate yourself with just the wrong community, the wrong group of individuals and stuff like that. And that's large scale and small scale. You get what I'm saying? And when I say the wrong, I don't necessarily mean it's going to be like a tragic, catastrophic thing, but it's just like you're not going to feel like that was the right move. And so again, like it's not even, it's real and it's serious, but it's not even it's not, I'm not talking about it on some doomsday shit. Like it's not gonna be like, oh, I'm in the wrong community, my life is over. No, it's just gonna be, you're gonna be like, damn, I might have wasted time. These are not my people. I don't feel comfortable here. I need to move and transition and go somewhere else. Right. And then also a fact of life. Sometimes we change our mind. That's another thing too. People be trying to punish people. Like sometimes we punish ourselves from not knowing what we didn't know until we experience some new shit. If new information gonna come. So don't, people will try to shame you for that too. Like you didn't know, what I'm saying? But that's another conversation. But what I'm saying? Like not everybody gonna show you grace. So you gotta make sure you show grace to yourself sometimes. Like when you just realize, like, man, they got me fucked up. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you get judged and all kinds, especially if you're a person with a vision and a mission, or you just an individual, like, and this is what Aries and even Venus and Aries can create as far as understanding, like, damn, like, and this is like kind of just what even the fire horse year is about, and it being a 1 year. You know what I'm saying? You just cannot make everybody happy, and that's the fact of life, and you got to let things go. You got to let things be. But anyway, that's down. Yeah, anyway. Now let's talk about do's and don'ts, right? So some of the do's, right, is to lean into rest. I know it doesn't sound like Aries rest, but you need rest and you need time, space, and this is what I mean by quiet time, because really what's happening in that quiet time is that you're learning the language of your intuition through what feels right and what feels wrong. Sometimes when you caught up in what you think you're supposed to be doing, you forget to listen to what you know you should be doing. Everybody is going to have an opinion, especially if you in situations where you've manifested, whether it's a spouse. Everybody has a family, you know what I'm saying? I mean, even people who don't have family, you might have people just in your life, friends, responsibilities, and the more responsibilities you've accumulated, the more you gonna have people in your ear trying to tell you what's right, what you should do, what they can't do, what you can't do. And you gotta take time to sit with yourself and listen to what's right. And see, the thing about it is, even like, for example, let's say you got a wife and kids, or you got a husband and some kids, right? It's not about isolating yourself or alienating yourself and coming up. Now you think you listening to your intuition, and now you just going off and doing your own thing, and now you done destroyed the family and and said, fuck y'all, I'm just doing me. And no, no, we still got to be responsible adults. What I mean is, you listen to that intuition, but then now you have to deal with, now the next choice or the next action is to either to bring it up, to communicate it, to confront, and through the engagement, through the conflict, through the whatever, how another person reacts, you can't control that. But this whole energy and just in life in general, it's about being honest with yourself so that you can be honest with the world, so you can engage the world honestly. You get what I'm saying? So, because as the human aspect of things, you know what you know, but no one else knows what's on your mind until you create the bridge. And that bridge is the communication that connects one mind to another mind. That's what people really mean when they say communication. Like, communication is really not a key. I think communication is a bridge. It's the ability to take what's in your mind and connect it to what's in someone else's mind. Communication alone ain't gonna do nothing, but it can create a foundation for y'all to see what's on the other side that doesn't normally get shown. Like imagine like you on this side, this city, and there's another city over here, right? Without a bridge, a person's expressions, aka what that city does, the activity of that city, like if they were doing fireworks, you could see what's going on over there, but you don't understand it. You don't really know either. You don't know if those are gun, you don't know if those are explosions because they're going under attack, or they if they're having a parade. You just see the expression. That's the thing with communication. Communication creates the opportunity for you to go where they're at and then come back. How far you're willing to go into another person's mind, aka another person's city, is like your capacity to understand others. Communication alone don't mean shit if you're not willing to go where someone else's mind is. And see, it's a two-way thing. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's like an active, like you gotta like you're trying to understand, you have to listen to understand. That's like you going to their city and not just going to their city and then leaving. It's like again, deep understanding is you going to their city and then it's asking questions. Hey, what's on this street? Hey, what's down this alleyway? Oh, why is this building like this? Like imagine a tourist. But then there's some tourists who go to a city and they don't give a fuck about none of the street names. They just go in, maybe get some drinks, and they go right back to their city. That's like a person who doesn't have a capacity to understand. So they're not listening to what you're saying to get a better idea and map of your mind. They're going over there to maybe experience or get what they want and then come back, take a bunch of Instagram pictures, then come back. You get what I'm saying? Like that's yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the do's and don'ts. So yeah, lean into rest and learn the language of your intuition and what feels right. Considering the structural requirements necessary for your desires to be supported. So Venus and Aries, Venus desires and what we want. Saturn, structural importance, procedure. What is it going to take to build what I want and to support it? Because it's one thing to get what you want. It's one thing to build something that you like, but what's going to support it? And that's the beauty of having Saturn in the mix next to Venus. Again, this is like as crazy and hectic and chaotic it might feel. This is very potent, powerful energy for you to get some real shit, like get some real shit going. All right, I'm getting excited. And then next is reflecting on what you can control within the circumstances that you are in. So you got to look at your circumstance and you got to ask yourself, not what do I feel pressured to do, but what do I actually have control over and work with what you have. That's a very Venus and Aries energy. Working with what you have and making do. Don't get too caught up in what you don't have to the point where you get stagnant, to the point where you get too caught up. And again, you're dreaming too much. You're too much in Neptune. Neptune making an illusion to make you think you can't reach what you want. When if you get out of that, get your head out the clouds, really should be saying get your head out your ass, right? You can see what's available to you to grasp. And this is like the Aries energy of moving quick and, really just being raw. Move with what you got. Don't worry about polishing it. We're not talking about Taurus. We're not talking about another earth energy. We're not talking about Taurus. We're not talking about Libra because Libra want to make it pretty. Libra want to make it harmony. Taurus want to make it comfortable. Venus is in Aries right now, so you gotta make it raw. Shout out to ODB, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And then next is intentional isolation. So not alienation, not rejecting and going, burning bridges for the sake of burning bridges. Intentional isolation. I'm gonna set this time to just kind of do me and get my space. Or you being like, again, you might have to let people know too, like, hey, look, I just need some time. I need some space to myself. If you got too many, again, back to the example with a family that you done manifested, like, hey, I need my space. You know what I'm saying? I love y'all. Again, there's ways to do this without being a asshole. And then the last thing is forgiveness. But better than forgiveness is peacemaking. See, what are you really fighting for? Venus and Aries is a fight for peace. So, or you might not want to fight for it, but it is a fight. Sometimes it's about making fighting for peace within yourself. This is really what I mean, because you don't have the control to fight for other people's peace. And see, this is the thing with, the media where it gets real tricky because it gets people so caught up in trying to fight for things that they cannot control. You cannot control what your like how you in America trying to fight for peace in a place that your country is assaulting. Like, I get it. I get it. I get where y'all trying to come from. But you have to realize you have no control over that. So I'm not saying become numb and ignore the shit, but I'm saying direct your energy to what you can control. Because what you can do is take your dollars out of the system or do something that's really going to disrupt what the country is doing to, what you can do is connect with people in your community to create a hyper local food system to where you don't got to depend on going to the supermarket and paying for this and that. What you can do is connect to other people and start a bartering system so you don't got to use resources that you get what I'm saying? It's like we have to be intelligent. This is a new age. Pluto is in Aquarius. We have to use our minds, actually. It's not just enough to have faith and believe in going on with whatever the hell is going on. We have to actually use our minds. We have to actually use our minds. You know what I'm saying? Man, you know what I'm saying? Talking about the age of Aquarius and shit, or whatever you want to call it, right? Because people are like, oh, it's not the age of who gives a fuck? Like, we just, who gives a damn? And that's where I start to be like, man, fuck this astrology shit. Because it's like, who cares? You know what I'm saying? It's, whether you believe, well, whatever the semantics are, I don't care, you know. But I do care. And that's why, get passionate. Now, here's the low octave of this energy, right? Low octave of Venus and Aries. So this is what you need to look out for yourself to participate in, but also be mindful of other people who might not know how to deal with this energy and being able to spot signs within them that can help you know whether to keep distance or maybe add 2 cents if it's somebody you care about or somebody, somebody who trying to get it right but might not see it. So this is the low octave energy, victim-minded aggravation. So people who think they the victim or are just so exhausted that they have no power to not make themselves the victim. And so they get aggravated and frustrated and create havoc on a small level, right? Yeah. Passionate denial of self-truth. So lying to yourself, but doubling down and saying, no, I'm gonna stick with what's familiar because I'm too afraid and too much of a punk ass, you know what I'm saying, to go for what I want. And you're gonna see. And this is also you talking to yourself. This is conversations you might have to have with yourself all day. Stop being a punk ass bitch and go get the work done. Stop being a bitch. Get up and get to it. Stop being scared about this. Stop caring about what they're gonna say. Do this because it's important for me. Uh, self-abandonment of any kind. So anything that look like self-abandonment, you know your truth. You know your truth better than anyone. But whether or not you're ready to see it is up to you. But self-abandonment of any kind that's going to bring you on a low octave. And you do not want to start this energy off with low octave because this is a beautiful energy to actually get what you want for once. Wouldn't it be nice? But it's going to come with the fight. It's going to come with a sacrifice or two. You know what I'm saying? Uh, this will lead to burning the wrong bridges, self-isolating to your own detriment, or aggressively aligning with the wrong things out of impulse or spite. I'm gonna get again revenge tropes. I'm gonna get with this so that it's fuck them. Whole time you're not hurting nobody but yourself. You think you hurt somebody else's feelings, but you just ruined your own life. This is like the example is like, oh, someone cheated on you, I'm gonna cheat back. But you think you getting your get back, you just really fucking up your own peace when you really needed to just move on, heal from it, let it go. You know what I'm saying? These are real things that happen. Um, what to look out for. So rushing energy or misplaced urgency. If I understand the world is burning, I know there might be a hole in your pocket and rent coming up next week or whatever. right? Well, I mean, it's the seventh. So rent passed. You might be late on the rent. Um, Now, again, take care of your responsibilities. But essentially, what I'm saying is that anything that's got you rushing or making you feel urgent about something where if you just to take it two steps back, you realize really isn't urgent. Sometimes you get around people who make something urgent because they care about it, but you have to also stand firm in your truth and know what's actually where your energy begins and ends and where somebody else is projecting urgency onto you. Because that happens a lot, especially in like, that can happen in relationships of all kind. That can happen in it happens a lot of times in work dynamics. Somebody's making something urgent when it's like, yo, okay, I understand we got to get this work done, but sometimes people come to work with other bullshit going on in their life, and they might be your manager, and now here they in your ear, getting your energy riled up, making you think you got to rush for something where it's like, hey, relax. I'm still gonna get it done, but it's not about trying to like you can confront them, but it's not even about confronting them, but it's about maintaining your understanding of what's important to you so that you don't um, get caught up in that energy that is not yours. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more about self-preservation than it is about trying to be confrontational. Like, man, and I'm not talking about beefing with your manager or beefing, when you keep that projection, not even try, you don't always gotta like try to fight it, but it's about having your own mind to know what you want to do about it. Because what you do is what you do, but it's about understanding what's going on. So just be on the lookout for that. Rushing energy, you rushing, or others trying to rush you, or people projecting urgency onto you, or you making something urgent that ain't urgent. I understand you want to get your business off the ground, but you got to create the foundation first. Saturn and Aries. I understand you want to be a multi-million selling artist, but you got to make the music first. Saturn and Aries, and it has to be good. Saturn and Aries, you have to develop the skill. I know you want to make $3 million off of it. I know you want to make feature films that cost hundreds and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, but you have to get the crew first. You have to write a good story first. You have to cast the good actors first. You have to do, you have to reframe urgency. We all do because in urgency, it creates such a nervous energy. Your nervous system ain't even manifesting things for you in an appropriate manner. So you all over the place. It's not going to work for you. Overly pessimistic or victim patterns of thought. You or other people, if do not be around other people who always speaking down pessimism onto your dreams, especially not now. Or victim patterns of thought. You got to check yourself and make sure you're not making yourself the victim in your own story. Nigga, this is your mind. Stop making yourself the victim in your own mind. How the hell, like, how you gonna win if you ain't right within? Lauren, thank you. You know what I'm saying? Lauren gave y'all the game. She already told you, and overly pessimistic. Look, having a little bit of pessimism or realism into whatever you're doing is healthy. It's okay. And having a person just because a friend is pointing out something that you should, or especially a spouse, just because they point out something that you might not want to hear, does not mean that they are the enemy. So that's another thing too, making people the enemy. Don't do that. Um, Pleasure impulses or forceful energy from you or others. Anybody trying to debo your shit, trying to force you into something, trying to force something onto somebody else, chill out. That's that Venus and Aries energy. Chill out. That's going to get you in trouble. Or pleasure impulses, doing things just because it feels good. Or, you know how sometimes you be like, for instance, you could be working on a creative project, right? Now, the thing about the creative process is sometimes you have to think through a problem. And this generation, this time period, this era we in, is becoming lazier and lazier in the sense of whenever difficult things arise, first thing we want to do is jump off and do something to give us the dopamine. So whether that's, oh man, I'm trying to make record this song and it's not coming out right. Oh, I'm just grab the phone and scroll. Before you know it, you done closed the laptop and completely checked out. Or you ran to an addiction, something that you do for pleasure to kind of get your mind off of the difficult things that you got to do in life. But I'm gonna tell you like this right now. You have to fight. You have to understand that shit about yourself, and you have to teach yourself and build the muscle to do difficult things during difficult times. The best art, the best things in life are made with concentration and figuring out difficult shit. So if you don't actively practice that skill, you become lazy, and this is what's going to make you, this is what's going to separate you from those who actually put in the work and achieve their goals. You're going to be a person who don't achieve your goals because you don't know how to sit through a little bit of difficulty. You don't know how to figure out a problem. You don't know how to critically think long enough with concentration and focus to work through an issue. That's going to show up in every other aspect of your life, and it's going to fuck your life up. And then last but not least, alienating yourself because of shame. I understand. We all have shame in something, but shame is never going to change anything for you. If you let shame swallow you all, you will not live life. And trust and believe that there are better things on the horizon. So you have to make peace with that. You have to forgive that. You have to fight for peace in that area, right? So that you can get up and shame and shine. Like, you know what I'm saying? Shame and shine. Like you gotta confront that. Venus and Aries is confronting that. Love yourself in that manner. Like, you know what I'm saying? You have to confront that. Now let's talk about some alignment. So we got the square with Jupiter and Cancer. So we have to learn how to care about ourselves enough to go after what we want instead of what we were told or pressured to want. Appreciate your autonomy, trust your own authority on matters regarding your happiness and your fulfillment, really. Because beyond happiness, fulfillment, because sometimes you're not always going to be happy. Fulfillment is really the or satisfaction is really the words I'm looking for. And then we have Saturn with Pluto, um, or sextile with Pluto. I said Saturn. We have Venus and Aries sextile and Pluto. So this is an opportunity to lean into transformation, noting the raw instincts signaling what we now want and what we should deserve in appreciation for the growing pains we must endure. So yeah, it's a hard time for everybody. I understand, I get it, but you can do it. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, it's not even about you can do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. You know what I'm saying? So just understand, like, okay, this is sextile and Pluto. So that might not always feel the best, but if you lean into the transformation, the answers will reveal themselves. You know what I'm saying? You just got to continue to peel things back. All right. So that is the message for today. If you found this information helpful, please hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe. And you already know if you got questions or just something that you noted or want to share, please put it in the comments. And you can always hit me up at davebeyond95@gmail.com if you want to get a one-on-one consultation. Just put astrology help in the subject line of the email and I'll get right to you. Other than that, much love, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace.